welcome everybody to the very first Water Explorer talk. Can you hear me good? I hope so. And really hope that whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening where you are, your day is going really well as of now. And this turtle is hoping it as well for you. And I will be your host for today, together with Leray Davies, which is the Global Director of Education here at FEE. And as we are slowly settling in, I would like to ask you if you could, if you have not done so already, to just switch the name of to your organization name and country name so that it is visible to everybody. And I think it's also really nice to see where everybody is joining from. And we could, I think, already start a bit. While we are waiting for the very last few people to join, I would like to walk you through our agenda for the day. In a minute, I will introduce you our speaker, and together with her, we will have a talk about marine conservation with a specific focus on sea turtle protection. And after that, we will move on to sharing water-related important stories from our network, followed by a Q&A session and a short quiz time. So make sure that you have your phone to scan the QR code, and then we will wrap up the webinar with a very important video to just let us understand why we're here and why we are doing the work that we're doing and help raise awareness and protect our ocean. And so I would say that I really hope that you're as excited as me to start. And I would say we could officially kick off the first Water Explorer talk. And the host that we're having today is Christine Figgener. Hello, Christine.
Hello there. Thanks for
Hello,
having
and
me.
hello. No, of course. Thank you so much for joining. And just a quick introduction. Christine is one of the very international, recognized marine conservation biologist, ocean advocate, and science communicator that has been really fighting over the last 2 decades on ocean protection with a specific focus on sea turtle conservation. And so, Christine, as I said, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I would like to have a talk with you about your amazing work that you're doing, your constant challenge, and the vision that you have on this very important work. And so I would like to start the talk with you, just asking, what was the journey to arrive here and to become a marine biologist? And what was for you really the moment in which you understood that this was the path for you and why you decided to also focus on sea turtle? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people always expect an answer that says, well, it was a very straight line from A to B, and I can tell you, as often in life, it was not. I knew very early on in my life that I did want to become something like an explorer, something also related to the ocean. But as a child, I didn't even have the vocabulary to say, well, this is what a biologist does. That came with time. So I was an intern in an aquarium starting with about 13, where I worked with marine mammals at this time. And I was exposed to a lot of biology students that came and did some studies there. And that was pretty much where I was gaining the knowledge. Okay, how could I actually do that? Become this explorer in the modern world? Because obviously, Alexander von Humboldt don't really exist nowadays anymore in that form. And so I was sure, okay, I wanted to study biology, and I wanted to also study marine biology at some point, but also learning that, yeah, maybe marine biology isn't actually what I want to do, or only what I wanted to do. So I started with biology and animal ecology and behavioral physiology because I really wanted to work with animals and wasn't too interested maybe in all the microcosmos that exist in the ocean as well, which is important. I don't want to deny that, but that wasn't really what I was interested in. And my big love for many, many years, and I mean, they still are, were humpback whales. So my journey began pretty much with the idea I want to study humpback whales. I want to study their songs because they have these very incredible, elaborate songs that evolve over the course of their lifetime, where they have, you know, well, so many incredible things about it. But this is how I started. And sea turtles at that point were really not that much on my radar. I had never been exposed to them. I had seen them in an aquarium. And while I was studying already biology, I had the chance to go to Egypt, and that is where I saw my first wild sea turtle. But still, it wasn't anything that was really on the front of my mind, I would say, up until I went to Costa Rica while I was already in my master's studies to work as a research assistant in a sea turtle project. And I went there because I thought, well, I need to gain some field skills, which is very important in the area of biology because unfortunately, university does not prepare as well enough, especially if you want to do some field work later on. And so I went there for a few months, and that was really the moment where this door to the sea turtle world opened up for me. For the very first time, saw a nesting sea turtle, and it wasn't just any sea turtle, but it was the largest that exists, the leatherback turtle. And so many people don't still know that this animal even exists because when I say sea turtle, you will probably think of something like that looks more of what we saw in the video, but the leatherback turtle looks so different. It is this massive animal that is the size of a VW bug, about 300 to 600 kilograms, looks like a dinosaur, has walked with the
Wow.
dinosaurs, and that animal came at night on the beach right in front of me to lay her eggs. And
Wow.
for me, that was like the epiphany of, wow, what is that? And why didn't I know about it? I thought I was pretty well informed. And then, of course, with all the trainings that we got during that time, I also immediately learned, wow, they're at the brink of extinction. So I've got to see one, but there is a good chance there won't be leatherbacks anymore in maybe a decade or 2 decades. And so I felt incredibly guilty and thought, my goodness, I don't think I can let that happen in my lifetime. And so this is really what sucked me into this whole world of sea turtles. Um, and
And
20 years later, I'm still here, I guess.
that's beautiful. And it really is true, as you said, that sometimes it's more the path that chooses us than we could choose it. And sometimes it just happens for the most of us. And it really is what also makes it so special. And as you've also already mentioned, you've done your master research in Costa Rica, and I know that you've then decided to stay there, and it's now been almost 7 years that you're there. And I
20,
wanted
20
to
years.
20
20 years.
years, 20 years. Oh, wow. And I wanted to ask you, what are the main projects that you are running now in Costa Rica, or any project or mission that it's really dear to you, that you would like to talk to us about?
Yeah, so for that, I think I have to step back because 20
Mhm.
years is a long time to talk about the project that, I am doing right now because they are the result of what I have been kind of going through in the 20 years. Because when I started 20 years ago in Costa Rica, sea turtle conservation was very much about mitigating the human impact locally, right? Because we still have the issue in a lot of countries, including Central America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, although Europe, some countries, that people still exploitatively use sea turtles. So that means they eat the eggs, they kill animals to eat the meat, and they use the shell of some species to make certain items, everyday items from that. So that meant the first decade, pretty much in Costa Rica, I spent on the beaches, patrolling the beaches at night, encountering the nesting female, stay with the female, and safe keep the eggs so nobody would get to them. So that was pretty much our very direct, very, very hands on way of protecting the animals and also their offspring, right?
Mhm.
And with the years, though, and also a lot of environmental education that we have been doing simultaneously, there is a big switch in the behavior of people, right? So it is not the most prevalent thing anymore. It still happens. I don't want to deny that. And especially if there's a lot of poverty in communities, it's more the symptom that you still see stuff like that happening. But what I've learned over those decades is while I was walking the beaches collecting data, that a lot of the animals that are coming were already exposed to threats that were really
Mhm.
out of my hand, right? So I saw leatherbacks coming back with massive boat propeller slashes, with scars that were the result of an interaction with a fishing net somewhere in the ocean. I saw animals die because they had been eating plastic. And so that pretty much led to a massive change in my approach as well. So it has been taking a while. But I would say in the past 7 years, or maybe even before that, I made a huge switch away from nesting beaches because we are only protecting a very small portion of a sea turtle's life on that nesting beach. It's literally only the females and their eggs. But 90% of the life of a sea turtle happens in the ocean. And
Mhm.
just as sea turtles, we also depend on the ocean, right? It's our life support system. It regulates the climate. We get our oxygen from that. We get our food from the ocean. So for me, I think with the time, I was like, okay, this is so much more about the big picture. And my personal work right now with sea turtles is a lot about identifying, first of all, where sea turtles spend most of their time, and then trying to figure out what are the main threats they're facing exactly in those areas. So are we talking about industrial fishing, or is there a huge accumulation of plastic? Or, for example, I worked for a while in Texas, and Texas sees more and more frequently massive cold snaps, and they have a lot of juvenile turtles swimming in the waters. And so that is a massive problem because we have climate change. Our climate is changing. That means those things, those extreme weather events are happening more and more often. And so while I'm doing this very, hands-on, my other part of my work is actually talking to people and convincing them that it's not just about sea turtles, but it's also about our life support system. The sea turtles are just an indicator with everything that is going wrong in our oceans, and they can help us answer some questions. But in the end, it's up to us and our lifestyle to change that and also help sea turtles in the ocean, right? So you don't have to patrol the beaches with me at night anymore, but at home you can make changes that will help my sea turtles in the ocean. So
Yeah,
yeah, so that's
yeah.
pretty much what I think in a nutshell I'm doing these days. Satellite transmitting, underwater cameras, and trying to see how the turtle actually lives within its larger ecosystem, and then protecting that ecosystem.
Yeah, and that sounds just so incredibly beautiful and really inspiring. And thank you actually also for mentioning the fact that it's really not just about protecting it only, but really to advocate for it. As you said, you're also like a science communicator and an ocean advocate, and this is so important to let people know what you do and what you do on a daily basis and during your work. And so, on that note, I also wanted to ask you, because I was also really personally curious, what's like a typical day look like for you there in Costa Rica? Do they follow a regular routine, or there is like it's like a very dynamic work, and maybe it changes from week to week? And yeah, I would say walk us through a bit a day for you there.
Yeah, so a typical day I think doesn't really exist for me because my work environment is incredibly dynamic. So it can be one day one thing and the next day something completely different. I like it because I'm getting bored very easily. So this is definitely the environment I'm
Yeah.
thriving in. Um, it's just, yeah, I'm also self-employed, right? So that means there is no boss that tells me you have to do this and remember to do that. So I have to be very organized. That is definitely one thing. And I mean, a day can be something as boring as I wake up, walk my dog on the beach, and then come back to my desk and just sit on the computer, the entire day because I have to maybe write reports or write a proposal for a research permit, or do some video calls. Or it can be as crazy as, well, I am going to bed at 5 in the evening to get up at 2 in the morning to do a beach patrol, collect data. I'm on the beach till 6 in the morning, and then I might be, going in the water in the afternoon to do some snorkeling and underwater camera trapping or whatever. So this is kind of the two extremes, and sometimes it's just a mix of the two where I'm trying to walk my dog, work on the computer, and do some data collection. So it can be all of those things. Yeah.
Course. Well, that doesn't sound like a typical, day for any of us, at least here in Denmark with the winter. But hopefully, with the spring, we can also enjoy a bit the beach. But it's just also incredible as your day are looking like. And I would like to switch onto something that I would say that when we talk about sea turtle protection and ocean protection, we cannot not talk about and not face the challenges that the real world is really taking us on. And due to your incredible experience of 2 decades there, what are the main threats that the sea turtles are currently facing, and what do you think are the main causes for it, and what could we do about it? Because I'm sure that
Yes.
you've seen most of it, as you also were mentioning it before.
Yeah. So I'm first of all appreciating that you're not just saying main threat as in the singular, because the issue really is sea turtles are facing a whole array of threats.
Yeah.
I don't want to rank them because they're also very much interlinked with each other. And I'm giving an example right now after that. But
Mhm.
if you have to think about it in categories, you have things such as, well, there is first of all the biggie climate change. So we have rising sea levels, our nesting beaches are disappearing, nests are eroded because of the ocean coming closer to the vegetation than usual. Temperatures are rising. And for those that don't know, but sea turtle sex is defined by the temperature during incubation. So we are producing way more females at this point than we're producing males, sometimes even exclusively, which eventually will be an issue. Sea turtles have a very long generation time. They don't reach sexual maturity until about 20 to 40 years, but we are producing more females for the past 20 years. So it will become a problem if we don't have enough males in the long run. And what I already mentioned, we also have issues with, you know, turtles venturing into more northern or southern zones because the temperatures are increasing. And then we have extreme weather events where water temperatures drop really quickly, and sea turtles are what we call ectotherms, so they can regulate their own body temperature. And so that leads to cold stunning events and other issues. That's climate change, the one biggie. Then the next big thing is the exploitation. And there we kind of talk about either direct exploitation, what I've just said, people still eat turtle eggs, turtle
Mhm.
meat, use the shell for some stuff. But we also have the issue that sea turtles are the sad byproduct of another form of exploitation of our ocean, and that is the industrial fishing. So even though sea turtles are not the target species, we literally lose hundreds of thousands of sea turtles every year in fishing nets. They have to come up to the surface to breathe, just like us humans, and they drown in those nets. So that is a massive issue as well. Also, because we usually say from about 1,000 babies, only about one makes it even to adulthood, so reaches sexual maturity. And that is, it's a system that sea turtles are implementing, and it worked for many millions of years. But the thing is, though, as an adult turtle, you usually don't have any large predators, enemies anymore. And so in those fishing nets, we usually lose the one out of 1,000, right? So it's the one that actually already made it. And so this is but it makes it even more detrimental. And the next big category, so we have climate change, we have exploitation, and then we have pollution. So our oceans are facing a lot of different forms of pollution. Some are more visible, such as oil spills, for example, or of course the plastic pollution. But we also have invisible pollution because of fertilizer runoff and pesticides that in some populations in sea turtles, for example, lead to some really ugly cancer. It's called fibropapillomatosis, and animals that are highly affected by it are unable to feed, to swim, and pretty much die a pretty horrible death. Um, and since I see already the next question is, about the plastic. So if you were wondering of how plastic is actually harming sea turtles, so the issue is they can get entangled in large items.
Yeah.
So for example, fishing nets or big bags, but they're also eating plastic. So the estimation is that about 80% of all the turtles that are swimming in our ocean right now have plastic in their stomachs, and it can lead to a blockage in the digestive tract. It can lead to wounds, to actual wounds in the digestive tract, and pretty much that they can't feed anymore because just their stomach is so full of plastic. But unfortunately, this is not the only thing. So even if it's not as crazy as that, even tiny pieces of plastics have been linked to a decreased probability of survival. So plastic carries a lot of toxins and some weird biofilms. And so when a turtle eats it, there is a good chance that if there is a higher chance of pretty much getting poisoned by that plastic and to die earlier than they would have if they wouldn't have plastic in their stomach.
And I
And
believe
so,
it's
yeah, go ahead.
it's really important to also raise awareness on this matter, because it's not really easy sometimes to link maybe a piece of plastic to know the real damage of what that piece of plastic could do, as of course really well, like something as small as a plastic straw could then enter in the ocean and could really end up in the nose of a sea turtle. And it's very famous, the video that also was taken a few many years ago that actually raised an incredible and global awareness on the single-use plastic. And so it really is important to raise awareness on how the single-use plastic can create real damage, as you've just mentioned, to the life of sea turtles, and really threatens them.
Yeah, and what I want to talk about, just because people always say, well, plastic is not the biggest issue, but it's fishing. No, it's climate change. So why I don't like to rank it, I think I said that in the beginning, is that all of those things are linked, right? So if we're going with the example of plastic, how or what is plastic made from? It's made from fossil fuels. Fossil fuels is what fuels our climate change issues, right? So that's the one thing. And then the other problem is also fishing gear. What is fishing gear made from? It's made from plastic. So these things are all interlinked together, right? They do not exist in a vacuum. And the big thing about all the threats that I just named is the common denominator is us humans and how we live in our world today, right? So if you're asking for the cause, unfortunately, it's us humans. The beauty of it is, though, we are also the ones that can change it, right? So this is really what I want people to understand, is it's in our power as individuals to really make use of our demand when we go out and use our money to vote, when we go out shopping, when we go out eating, when we travel. We are supporting, with every dollar that we're spending, we're supporting something, or we're voting against it if we don't support it. And I think that is something very important. Also, I do not like the narrative of, oh, individual versus system. Yes, we are all living in a system that is not very healthy. And yes, there's also some changes that need to happen on the big stage where companies need to be held accountable. But it starts with us in the end. No company is going to produce something that nobody is going to buy, right? So we are the ones that are creating the demand. And so that needs to be in our heads, and also the masses make the difference. So nobody needs to be perfect. We all don't need to be completely plastic free. But if everybody just does one thing, changes one little habit, sticks with it, talks about it, that is really how change is happening in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a very big fan of actually having the individual as being responsible, but also being the one that really can change things because we're not just individual. One simple action can really tackle a lot of others and can really inspire a lot of other actions. And that is why, after the talking about the challenge, I also wanted to end the talk with a positive note and to talk about vision and the insights that you have for the future. And in fact, a question of mine is what are the main action that you would say that young people, but of course not only them, all of us as you know the humans could take to protect the ocean?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's like four things. So first of all, I feel people need to get informed better. So that means you don't need to know about everything, but try to get really deep into one topic that you're really excited about. And then you need to make sure that you are talking about it, that you're challenging misinformation, that you really know what you're talking about. Um, that's I think this is the base because we have so much misinformation out there. Then the next thing really is as an individual, change something, one habit, one thing that you think, wow, this is really something I can let go of and stick to it, and then talk about it. Talk about it, talk about your why, talk about why it matters in the bigger picture. Use what you've learned about that topic, what I just first mentioned, and inform other people. And lastly, I think it's also about try to support people and NGOs that do the real work because there is so many egos out there. There's so many people that pretend. They're very flashy, but I think a lot of times the people that really do the work are not always that visible, but you can make them more visible and you can help them. You can help them fundraising, you can donate, you can volunteer your time in a good way. Um, just be careful of who you're choosing to support. I think that is another really important
Yeah, no.
point. But I think with these things, you're very well set up to help the world.
Really, absolutely. And I believe that education is really the very first key to a more sustainable world. And being aware and being educated really makes the whole difference. And from there, action can really spark a meaningful change. And to end this beautiful talk with you, I just wanted to ask you, was there a specific moment during your very long career at this point that either changed the way you saw conservation or just reinforced your why and why you're doing this? Was there a specific moment? Maybe you've is the one that you've mentioned before, or maybe is another one. But I was just curious to hear it from you.
Well, I think there is one thing is the origin story, but I think the it wasn't a single event, but my conversion story of how I see conservation now versus I saw it
Mhm.
20 years ago is really the accumulated experiences I've had on the beach, seeing that my influence, my direct influence on my turtles ends with the moment that they enter the water. And that is where most things are happening that I have no control over, but we as a human race do, right? So this is really, that's the one big epiphany I think that has changed for me. And the other thing is really that we always, when I started, we talked a lot about sustainability, about how to keep the status quo. I think, unfortunately, we are actually at a point in history where we need to talk about restoring things. It's not enough anymore to just keep the status quo, but we really have to think about ways of how we can restore ecosystems and make them livable again, because they're just not anymore. I mean, I don't know if that's very positive, but this is definitely something that is a challenge that's out there. Um, Also to connect people to the ocean. I think we are incredibly disconnected from the ocean, from
Yeah.
nature in general. I always get a little icky when people say, "Oh, so you're into nature." I'm like, no, we are all nature.
Nature,
This is
yes,
not, I'm
exactly.
not into it. It's
Yeah,
like we should all be in it. We are part of it, you know? And I
totally.
think this is
Mhm.
something that has become lost for some reason. And I think we need to get to the point again that we see us as part of the whole.
Yeah, and that's also exactly what we're doing today and what we're doing, all of us are doing to really keep this very big effort going. And what you actually said about the sea turtles going into the sea and not having control anymore of it, it's actually very poetic and very beautiful because we should do everything that is in our control, but we also need to accept and understand and do not actually be worried about what we cannot control because we are in the full potential of taking action to what we can control. And so I would say that that is something so beautiful and a very beautiful key takeaway that we could take from you, Christine. So thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you so much. And
Very
I
welcome.
would thank you so much, really. And I would love to continue actually on that very same note. To leave the floor to Leroy Davies, that, as I mentioned before, it's our FEE Global Director of Education, that will just talk to you about very inspiring stories from FEE Network that is already doing incredible efforts since decades now in all of the education spheres. And she will walk you through some water related stories. So, welcome, Lee.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you,
Thank you
Christine.
so much.
And of course, Christine, we're not quite finished with you, if that's okay. I do invite everybody here to, if you look on the bottom of your screens, there is a section there that's Q&A. So as we talk you through some of the examples here that we have from our FEE network, we'd love for you to share some questions that you might have for Christine. And Christine, after we've gone through that, if that's okay, we can take some questions from the floor for you. So thank you. So, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We've been so inspired, Christine, to hear from you and the work that you're doing. And I think everything that yourself and Isabel have been saying about these small actions, we need to keep positive, we need to do things, we need to educate. That's kind of the ethos behind everything that we do within our FEE programs. Now, we have education programs, we have eco schools, eco campus, young reporters for the environment, and learning about ecosystems and forests. But we also have our tourism programs as well, our Blue Flag Award for beaches and marinas, and our Green Key Award for hotels. So, what I want to show you here is just three examples of those positive actions. Now, they might seem small individual actions, but like Christine said, if lots of us are doing these actions, we're doing something, this is when we're going to have that input. So, first one up is from our member in Malta. Our member in Malta is the Nature Trust. And this one is a beautiful one. This was a full day beach clean that happened. So, as we know, there's lots of beach cleans that happen with our eco schools and on our blue flag beaches. But the young people here that you can see on the beaches had more. They were going to do more than just go out and do a litter pick. They had a full agenda of items and activities. And so after they'd gone out and collected the litter on the beach, they ranked, they had a look at what was the most common littered items. And what they also did was they got some microscopes out, some digital microscopes, and they started to look under the microscope at the things that they were finding to find out more about them. So they were looking at things like microplastics and nurdles. Now, you might hear us use that a lot. Nurdles are small microplastics, usually pellet size from about 3 to 5 millimeters. But as we heard Christine mention before, they were looking at fishing gear and ropes. They were looking also at cigarette butts. And even they found some deflated balloons that they were looking at. But they didn't stop there. Then, instead of being litter pickers, they became litter detectives and they started to have a look at where this pollution might come from. And so that way they can stop the pathway. And rather than going out and doing the litter picks time and time again, they could actually speak with the people and look at where the litter was coming from and try and stop it from its source. So it was a really great education setting. The next one that we have up is from our member in Malaysia, which is the Green Growth Asia Foundation. Christine, I think this might be your favourite one, actually. This is a very good project. It was one of our schools, it was one of the eco schools, but one of the eco schools that then developed a community project. So in Malacca, one of the eco schools worked with the state government and some environmental NGOs because they knew they wanted to have more than a bigger impact. They were going to do more. So they started in the classroom, and the teachers created lesson plans and quizzes and lots of great resources. And they even had in their classrooms turtle corners as part of their big education program where they were celebrating and showcasing the work that the children had done. But then they spilled beyond the classroom. They actually then started to do work with parents. And something we've heard before is they were asking the parents to pledge not to eat the turtle eggs or the turtle meat. They wanted them to do this and to make that pledge. And then, not content with just families, what they also then did is they started to work with the state government, and they added turtle-friendly lighting to an 800-metre stretch of coastline on the Padang Kamutin beach. And something very simple. They added 27 LED lights that were better than the sodium vapor lights, which they have, because the lights that they had originally, these nesting turtles, as they're coming into the beach, could see these lights from up to I think it was like 30 kilometers away. And they could see these and they were coming in, believing it to be the moon. And then unfortunately, as many of these lights were along the coast, along roads, these sea turtles, these nesting turtles were unfortunately being run over or they were dehydrated. So this project was wonderful. It was broad. But the other thing is, this particular section of beach where they were doing this work was home to 4 species of nesting turtles, one of which was the critically endangered hawksbill sea turtle. Now, as you were mentioning before, Christine, about that, this is there's less than, they believe, 8,000 nesting females in the wild. So this 800-meter stretch of beach, just doing something like changing the light bulbs in this section, 27 light bulbs, a few sessions and a few lesson plans could have a major long-lasting global impact. And then finally, our last case study. We could share case studies with you, I'm afraid, for hours and hours. We've tried to pick our top ones for you. Is from Argentina, from our member Alma Terra, who run our education programs and also our Blue Flag Award. And this is a story of innovation. This is very exciting. This is thinking about different ways. And the young people that you can see here are from the Michael Ham Memorial College. And they wanted to have a look at the hidden impacts of plastic sponges, the microplastics that might be coming off every time we have a wash and a shower and going down the drain. So they did some research to see what would be a better alternative. And they were looking at things like coconut husks. And what they decided, as you can see here, is knitted jute cloths were the best option. So they weren't just eco-friendly, actually. They also found that they were antimicrobial, which basically means they carried less bacteria. So they were healthy for our skin as well. Again, not content with just doing this, these students here started to work with some ladies from the Rincon Santa Hema Community Centre. And they actually sat aside and started doing some training, and they did entrepreneurships and they came up with ideas. So they got the community involved in the research and the work that they'd done. Back in school, the school decided out to carry a full week of knitting to make these sponges. And then what they did is they sold those cloths to the school community. They raised money and funds, which they then donated back to the community centre. So we had a full cycle of effects going on here. So they all seem like initially quite small projects, but when you look at the scale and the long-lasting effects of the education on the beach in Malta, of just changing light bulbs and getting parents to change attitudes in Malaysia, and then in Argentina, new business ideas and entrepreneurship, this has got some long-standing effects. And this is just a small sample of some of the things that have been happening across the Phi network. We would love to share more with you. And of course, if you're interested in finding out more, please head over to the Phi Global website. We have members in over 100 countries who are running our programs. I know some of them are on here today. I believe I even saw our member from Malta who was responsible for our first case study. So please do check them out. Have a look at the great work that's going on and be inspired. Remember what Christine said, lots of small actions, lots of education. That's the way we can make a big difference. So thank you. Just a sample here. And I think, Christine, if you wouldn't mind, we might have a few questions for you in the chat. If I'm just going to have a little look here. Um, okay. A good one, Christine. I wonder if you could perhaps give a little bit of advice here to Anjum, who's asking, how can students take up marine biology as their future careers? Kind of what subjects might they need to do? What training might they need to have in order to kind of follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, so in general, if you want to study biology, biology pretty much takes or uses tools from all the sciences, right? So they use math, we use math, we use physics, we use chemistry, and build on the scientific method, we are looking of what life is doing, right? Biology is the science of life pretty much. And so it is definitely helpful if you are somehow interested in any of those subjects, because that is pretty much what the core of biology is going to be about. In addition to that, so physics, chemistry, math, I can also recommend to do some of the classes in writing, because you will have to communicate your science as well, either very scientifically in a journal, or even if you are, for example, saying, you know what, like the hard sciences is not mine, but maybe you are going to be working for an NGO trying to communicate the science to the general public, or you decide to write for as a journalist, maybe for a big outlet, but you're also trying to communicate it to the general public. So writing and communication skills, I think sometimes are a little bit overlooked.
Oh, I'm afraid Christine has just frozen a little bit on us here. There, I think she just ended off with this idea of looking at the softer skills and the hard skills, and with journalism as well. And we do have our young reporters for the environment program, which is exactly perfect if any of you are interested in taking part any further. So we'll just give Christine a few moments to Christine, I think you're back. Are you
I'm
logged
back.
back?
Okay, good. I don't know what is
Yeah, you're
happening,
back.
honestly. I'm
No
so
problem,
sorry.
no problem. It's fine, no
Um,
problem.
so I don't know, did you hear my answer to the question? So communicating science, very important. So that was kind of my gist at the end.
Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. A really very specific question here. So, out of the thousands of turtle eggs, why do only a few or one actually make it? What are kind of some of the things that prevent them all from reaching maturity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sea turtles have a reproductive strategy, I would call it, which is built on quantity and not quality. So if we're looking into the kingdom of the mammals, which we humans belong to as well, we do have something called parental care. So that means we will take care of our youngs for many, many years in the sense of humans, even a few decades. And so that means we do not have the time and energy to have a lot of offspring. So we will have a few and we take very good care of them. Sea turtles don't do that. There is no parental care whatsoever. Mama turtle lays her eggs in the sand and then she is off, and the eggs need to fend for themselves. The babies need to fend for themselves. So that means they start very small. Even the massive leatherback starts as like a 45-gram tiny, tiny animal. And so that means there is already the idea built in that a lot of those baby turtles will not even survive the first days, the first weeks, up until they reach a certain size. So it is safety in numbers in the very beginning. And then later on, it's a race to grow really quickly. so no predator is able to eat them. I hope that answers the question. So that's the reason there is really by default only a few survive even.
And it's why it's so important that we do everything that we can then, like you say before, to make sure that these sea turtles, they're not eating plastic, they're not getting caught in the nets as well, because they've had this fight for survival. We want to make sure that they've got through and that they can start to mature and they can reproduce as well. One other one here now. Obviously, you're very, very well known for the video with where you're taking the straw out from the turtle's nose. Could you just tell us a little bit about the bit before that, what we don't see on the video, how that kind of how that came about, and perhaps also, do we know how that turtle is? Is that turtle okay? Is there any tracker on it? Is it happy? Is it still swimming
Well,
around?
it doesn't have a tracker on it. Maybe I can leave with the good news first. The turtle is fine. At least he was. A few years ago, we caught him, I think 1 or 2 years after this whole thing happened. And the reason that we know it is him is because we attached flipper tags to the flippers. They have a unique number. And with those numbers, I always call it, it's like the turtle's social security number. It only exists once. Actually, they have two social security numbers because they're not the same on each flipper. But with that, we are pretty much without a fault able to identify any animal that still carries the flipper tags. So he was happily mating with some other females, so he was just fine. How that situation came about, though, was that I was in the middle of collecting data for my PhD, for my doctorate studies. And we were capturing couples after they were done mating and brought them onto a boat. So I was able to take some skin samples for genetics and something called stable isotope analyses. I would measure the females and the males to see if there's size differences between the two, or if females prefer larger males over smaller males, all those kind of things. And while we had the animals on the boat already, I also had a colleague on board that is interested, or was interested back in the days, in the little critters that live on the turtle. So barnacles, leeches, all this kind of, parasites and non-parasites that live on them. And we found that the turtle had something encrusted in its nose, and we thought it is actually a barnacle. And so while I was done, he grabbed his pliers and wanted to collect it. And this was how the whole video started. It was not a barnacle. It was a plastic straw, of course, in the end, but we didn't know that at that point. Yeah.
Thank you
He's
so
still
much,
good though, as far
Christine.
as we know. He's good and he's okay.
He's
Excellent. We've
good.
just got one last very quick question, which I think is a really interesting one, because we talked about the subjects and we mentioned perhaps the sciences and so on. But we have from I'm guessing they might be a young reporter for the environment, is what advice would you give to a young writer who wants to use creative sectors or creative writing to inspire environmental change? And we'll have this as our last question before we move on to the section.
Okay, I absolutely love that question because I don't know, I have written a book as well. That is though pretty much not creative writing so much. So it is a mixture of nature, my story, and sea turtle knowledge. And the funny part about this book, though, is that I myself don't really read that much nonfiction. So I actually prefer science fiction and any type of other book so much more than, you know, real nature writing, because I don't think there's a lot of good nature writing out there either that captivates me the same way of how creative writing can capture me. And I think the best books I've read are books that really have a great story, that really I want to just keep on reading, but they teach me something that is real and solid at the same time. So I would say if you're trying to look, for example, I think one of my favorite science fiction writers is actually Michael Crichton, for example, this whole Jurassic Park series. If you look into, how he researched genetics, this idea in the second book of what would happen to a very intelligent animal if it would grow up with a parent. There's so many great scientific ideas in there that he just developed into something more. I love that type of learning, because, this is really how the facts stick with me so much better, as if I would just read it in a very boring context, I guess.
Thank you. That's great. We get book recommendations as well. And Jurassic Park and Lost World are my actual favorite books. They are phenomenal. So I would highly recommend them to everybody as well, as a bit of inspiration here. If you're looking for some creative writing, and think about, let your mind go wild with the possibilities of things that you could do. Thank you, Christine. Thank you very much. Well, I think if we can go to the next slide then, Izzy, I think we're going to change things around a little bit now. So we've been asking Christine lots of questions. We've been sharing our case studies with you. Going to give a little quiz for yourselves now. So Izzy, I'm just going to hand back over to you and you give instructions of what you'd like people to do, because it is quiz time. Christine, feel free to join this quiz also if you wish.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, as you said, we've heard Christine, and in this amazing talk that we had with her, there were actually already some of the answers to the quiz. So, if you would like to scan the QR code and just remember what we've said, because there might be things coming up in the quiz about it. And so, let's see if you could scan the QR code.
Or they can go to slido.com and type in the number.
You could alternatively go to slido.com. Type in the number is 1440277.
And could we perhaps put that in the chat as well, please, Isabel?
Yeah.
Lovely. So this is when we find out if the audience has been taking note of everything that we've said as well. Thank you, everybody. Yep. So if you follow the link, here we go. There was just a delay. So either scan the QR code, please, as Izzy's instructed, or in the chat, we've put the link with the code 1440277. Izzy, we'll pass back to you.
Thank you. Perfect. We are now seeing all the people joining. Thank you so much. And as of now, we will just start, and all the people joining in a bit can also just write the number. Thank you so much. We're seeing so many, and we can now start. So the first question is, when sea turtles see a floating plastic bag, they often mistake them for seaweed, small fish, or jellyfish. Let's see what is the right question. The right answer is jellyfish. Exactly, and many of you got it right. Congratulations. And then the next one. By 2050, there could be more plastic by weight than fish in the ocean if current trends continue. True or false? And this is also true. The next one is healthy oceans help fight climate change by absorbing CO2, storing heat, supporting carbon storing ecosystems, or all of the above. Give you a bit of time to think about this one, and it is all of the above. Absolutely. The ocean is so incredibly powerful, and that is why it is so important to have an healthy one. And then going to the next question. Fresh water makes up less than 3% of all the water on Earth. Is this true or false? And the answer is that is true. Exactly. Approximately what percentage of oxygen we breathe is produced by the ocean? Is it 10%, 20%, or 50%? And this question might be, let's see what the answer are. Exactly, it is 50%. Sometimes we don't really realize that an enormous amount of the oxygen we breathe, exactly the half of it, is actually produced by the ocean. And now to the next question. The ocean does not help regulate Earth climate by absorbing heat from the atmosphere. True or false? Exactly, it is false because it does help regulate. And now, which of the following contains the largest amounts of Earth fresh water? Is it rivers, lakes, glaciers and ice caps, or groundwaters? This might be tricky, and let's see what the answer is. Glaciers and ice caps, exactly. And now, this is an interesting one. Some of the water present on our planet might actually come from comets. Is this true or false? It is actually true. Some of the water that is present right now might come from comets that arrived on the Earth many millions of years ago. And this is pretty incredible to think. And now, which of these actions can directly reduce water plastic pollution? Using reusable bottle and bags, participating in beach cleanups, sharing what you've learned, or all of the above? And the answer is all of the above. All of them are right, and all of them, the amazing thing is that you are able to do it, and you have the capability to do it. So everybody really can take action, and it really does matter. And now, last but not least, which country in our network shared the story about the research on biosponges? Was it Malta, Malaysia, or Argentina? Of the stories that Lee told us about. Let's see. And the right answer is Argentina, exactly. Thank you so much. And let's see. Mel, congratulations. You're the winner of it. And thank you so much for participating into this quick quiz about how much you know about our blue plants. And now I will pass the word on to Lee again to talk about generation restoration.
Thank you, and congratulations, Mel. Well done. And Alexandra and Annabelle and everybody, thank you very much for listening.
Yep.
Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, then we have been talking about all of the things that have happened, all of the things that you can do, and we want to end this session with yourselves, giving you something that you can actually go off and do and have an impact on yourself. Now, some of the work that Fee has been doing includes work for the United Nations, the Generation Restoration Decade. And that is looking at examples within education of where people have carried out ecosystem restoration. So what we have here is a brand new campaign that we launched a few weeks ago. This is going to be running until 2030. And what we're doing is gathering case studies of generation restoration schools. We are looking for education settings who are doing things, who are working to educate and raise awareness of what we can do to restore our ecosystems. Now, much of what we've been doing for the UN decade for the restoration has had much of a focus has been terrestrial and land. So we're very, very keen actually to also get people to think about our coastlines, the mangroves, the salt marshes, the seagrass, the kelp forests. So we're really, really interested to hear from you. And if you are working in this sector, we would love for you to share your case studies of generation restoration. The plan with this is over the course of the next few years, we're going to be gathering all of these case studies on an interactive map. And anybody, anywhere from around the world can go onto this map and be inspired by the work that you've done. And as we said before, we've seen the work that Christine has done, her colleagues have done. We've had a look at 3 case studies from here. We've only managed to show you just those within this small amount of time. The idea here is that we gather this whole global network, best practices and examples that we can inspire others to do and to continue to develop the good work that's been happening with us. So please do take some time if you can, if you've got your phones, scan on here. If you don't at the moment, that's fine. If you head over to the Fee Global website, you'll be able to see in our activities what we're doing, and you can register to become a Generation Restoration School. And over the course as well of 2026, we're going to be providing you with lots and lots of resources to help you if you're not quite sure where to begin. And some of our resources coming very, very soon, our first set coming in the start of May, will actually include oceans, specifically small islands and the impact that climate change is having on small islands. And we've had our team from Mauritius and Comoros have been working on that for us. So look out for that as well when it's coming through.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lee, for the amazing work that Generation Restoration is doing. And as we are going to end of this talk, what I want to have it's just to take a moment to really reflect on the importance of the ocean and why we're doing this. As also Lee said, most of us, when we think about maybe sustainability, we'll link it to the terrestrial world, but most of it really comes from the ocean. And so we just wanted to share with you something that Dr. Sylvia Earle said about the ocean, and we really value it deeply, and we would like to share that with you.
The most fascinating thing about the ocean to me is that the ocean is alive. Earth is accountable. It's not just about rocks and water. It's the long history of years of fine-tuning the creatures, changing the chemistry of the planet over long periods of time. And we're just beginning to explore the ocean. You never know what you're going to find when you dive in. But you know that when you do, you're looking at the history of life on Earth, recorded in the lives of creatures, still doing what it takes to make Earth habitable for the likes of us. Think about it. 97% of Earth's water is ocean. That's where most of life on Earth is. We need to protect the ocean as if our lives depend on it, because they do.
Thank you so much for taking the time to hear this beautiful words of Sylvia Earle. And it really is true that our lives do depend on the ocean. And from what we've seen and we've heard in this talk, we really all share this responsibility of protecting the ocean because we also are part of it. So by protecting it, we also protect on a more general scale the planet and ourselves. And every one of us is capable of it, is valuable, and can really make a true and lasting change. So I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending today's webinar and today's Water Talk Explorer, and we hope to see you soon at the next one. Thank you, everybody, for joining. See you at the next one. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody.